Good morning. The March 16th, 2021 meeting of the Charter Authorizing Panel is called to order. And welcome everyone to our Zoom. Good morning, Mr. Baldwin.
Good morning.
Dr. Williams, good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Saraceni, good morning.
Good morning.
And we're hoping that Dr. Flowers is able to join us soon. I believe that Ms. Wright McMurray and Ms. Newton are unable to join us today. We have a
Eric Flowers is working at trying to get into he's trying to get in. The link wasn't working he wasn't getting the link, so he will be here for sure.
Thank you, Ms. Freno. We have a very short agenda today, but a very important agenda. So if we'll get started with the consent agenda, if you'll look over the minutes and let me know if you have any revisions. If not, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Williams, second by Ms. Saraceni to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are accepted. Action agenda item 1. Ms. Webb, if you'll introduce this item.
Do it again. Good morning. Today we're going to have an overview of digital learning program options and the application for charter schools. And today we have Dr. Tiffany Pride, Don Benton, and Ms. Kaufman is going to help present that information.
So panel members, let me give you a little background information on this. Several of our school districts would like to consider continuing a digital learning program within their LEA. So those school districts are working on an Act 1240 waiver with very detailed requirements, and they are submitting those plans to the department for review. They're working very closely with their co-ops and then submitting those plans to the department for review by a 17-member team. If it passes by and is reviewed by the department and then moves on to the state board, the state board can take action with confidence that there's been a very intense review of those applications. So several of our open enrollment charters and district conversions charters have also inquired about having a similar process to move through the charter panel, and they are going to be answering some of the very same questions, and we will be following the same review process with them so that when they come before you, you know that this diverse team here at DESE has reviewed those programs thoroughly. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pride or Mr. Benton to give us an introduction.
I'll let Dr. Pride introduce herself, and then I'll introduce myself and start right in.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tiffany Pride, Assistant Commissioner of Learning Services, and I'm going to turn it over to Don. He's going to start sharing.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pride. Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Benton. I'm Commissioner for Research and Technology, and I've worked with Dr. Pride and Deb Kaufman and a whole bunch of other folks through this whole process. And as Ms. Kaufman stated, we were trying to find a solution that would allow schools to continue a digital learning option, but we didn't want it to just be a free-for-all and a willy-nilly product that they were producing. So we all put together, and many members of our teams put their heads together. We worked with external constituents. We've met with superintendents, teachers, leaders all over the state to try to find a solution that will allow them to implement various solutions that best suit their particular school's needs. I'm going to share my screen right now, so bear with me just one moment. Let's pop that up there. And let me know when you guys can see my screen. Just a little thumbs up would be by someone. Okay, thank you, Dr. Flowers. So what you should see right now is a window showing basically the Commissioner's Memo COM-21-73, 0 states all the information that we provide schools throughout the state. We gave them links to the digital page that we've created that has a wealth of resources that they can utilize as they're going through this process. We want this to be a collaborative effort and not just one person at a school deciding, oh, we're going to offer a digital learning. We want them to work with their educational, instructional, and technology leaders for their district and with their co-op. We want to emphasize that we're not hoping, we're recommending, highly recommending that they work with their educational service co-op so that they can create the best learning opportunity there is for their kids. So if you looking up this Commissioner's Memo, it's out there on our webpage, COM-21-073, and it'll give you links to all the stuff I'm going to talk to you about today. As you're looking at this screen, you'll notice that we've created a really nice webpage, basically entitled Digital Learning. And one thing that we think of when we think about digital learning, sure that we're providing students with an element of control over time, place, path, or pace. And this is kind of the impetus of learning. As we realized the pandemic, and we were one of the few states that continued education when school closed down. We may have closed for school activities on campus, but we didn't close school. We didn't stop learning. And we've learned since back in March to today that there are a lot we were able to do, but a lot of things we're able to do better. And that's through collaboration, fail forward, if you will, learn mistakes. And as a group, and we worked with Dr. and Commissioner Secretary Key to build a plan that would help ensure that schools are able to implement a plan that's solid. Is it perfect? Probably not. They're going to learn through the way, but we wanted to help get them on the right track so that they weren't just over the place. So as you look through, and if you have the opportunity under Learning Services, Tiffany Pride and her team have done a terrific job creating a resource page for all the things that we're doing for the digital learning programming that schools are going to implement. Now let me back a little bit, and as I go into this, this will be explained a little bit better. It's not a recommendation or a requirement that schools implement a digital learning plan. This is strictly an option. There are other options available for them, but we wanted to give them an option that allowed us to use, as Ms. Kaufman said, an expedited process so that they could go through this process without having to individually come to the board and express their desire to offer digital learning options during the next school year. So we wanted to create something that allowed us to have a better grasp on what we're trying to do and allow them to look at different that are really important and vital to creating a strategic digital plan. So as you meander through this page, you'll notice that we have several links, but one of the key resources I want you to see is right here in the middle of the page, and it's the guidebook for digital learning. This is basic. There's been a lot of man hours, woman hours, I should say, put into developing this particular piece of guidance. And if our schools will take this document along, which is what, Tiffany, about 54 pages long, I believe, but it breaks down every single thing that you need to do to implement a really good, solid, and have a solid foundation for a digital learning option. When we were initially looking at this, we were thinking of trying to, well, you need to choose option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we realized that kind of or puts them in a path where they only have maybe 1 or 2 options. So we wanted them to be more innovative and creative and tell us, based on the concepts of synchronous, asynchronous, combination of those options, what kind of plan would they want to build that would help them continue education for kids and maximize student learning in a world where we have more options now. So we wanted to build a guide that was extremely simple, but very guys probably know all too well, being a part of the charter authorizing panel, that you have to dot every I and cross every T. Well, we believe that this guide gives them the tools to dot and cross every T as they go through this process. So we're really excited about this. We've had a lot of great feedback from superintendents and teachers and parents and constituents over the state telling us that, wow, this is really a good step-by-step mechanism to help us go through that process. We have videos that our schools and personnel can use to look through. That took place at co-ops. Every school had the option to attend one of these trainings if they were interested in offering a digital learning program for their school next year. We did the trainings for all of our co-ops. Dr. Pride and Ms. Kaufman and several others were involved in digital. We're strongly involved in that because Team Digital is our premier advocate for digital learning in the state of Arkansas, and they are an extension of the Department of Education, DESE, an extension of my team, actually. Kind of all of our teams, they work with Tiffany as much as they work with me, so and with Carly as well. They work with all of us. So we're real pleased to have a team like that who helped us do all this work as we went through it. And I'm not going to go through and click every one of these links. You can do that on your own free will. But I will show you some of the elements that are hidden behind some of these links. The big, like I said, is the guidebook for digital learning. It starts out very basic. We wanted to go through all the steps, and Dr. Pride of her team, who really is not only to be informational, but to be pleasing as well. So it's just not bogged down and you get lost in all the different and everything. But what we wanted to make sure we were doing as a state, and this is something that we noticed across the country, is people all over the place with how they were defining digital learning, how they were defining synchronous, asynchronous, hybrid, blended. It was just all over the place. So what we realized is we needed to hone in on refining some of that terminology so that we could be speaking the same language when we're talking to our schools and to our superintendents and our external stakeholders. We meander through this guide. We have all the check, cycle of inquiry. That's what the process is. We know that their first round of this may not be perfect, and they're hopefully going to reevaluate as they go along, and not yearly reevaluate. We want them to periodically reevaluate, maybe weekly, monthly, by each semester, to see what works, what doesn't work. And that's part of that whole plan, do, check process. And we want to make sure they engage in that process kind of as a part of our professional learning community work and our high reliability schools work. We want to make sure that they're implementing that process. So not only are we giving them tools, but we're also modeling the use of those tools. And guys, please stop me at any time and ask questions. Dr. Pride will probably have better answers than I will, so feel free to stop us anytime. We wanted to define what is digital learning, and I'm not going to go through the entire book, but here is one of the most critical pieces that you have to take in consideration when you're looking at developing a digital learning program. I wanted to make sure that schools took into consideration the interaction. Will your interaction with the students be asynchronous, synchronous, or a combination of those? How is the delivery? The delivery is a key. Are you going to offer virtual, off-site, full-time? Are you going to do blended? Just the variations of those. And we wanted to make sure that we define those so that the school speaking the same language back to us when they are presenting their plans. And then, of course, the platform. Platform was one of the biggest discussions excuse me, that we had throughout this year, discerning between an LMS and LMS, what kind of video communication packages do you want to implement as a school? And then how do those need to work together, or do they need to be independent of one another or working together? Well, we've already had a few applications come in. We're real pleased to see that they're taking these steps into consideration when they're developing their plans. As we go through, of course, we wanted to paint a big picture. What is the big picture plus? Do we have a need for it? Some schools don't have a need for a digital learning plan, so you don't need to implement one. You may want to still continue with the simplicity of AMI days because you're planning on having face-to-face instruction that 178 days. nothing else. That's what we're going to do. Might deal with the student on a case-by-case basis depending on the pandemic and or other needs. So the school may not really have needed a wide or a school-wide learning program option. So they may have just decided we're going to go back to school, we're going to go back to as normal as we can, and we'll deal with those on a case-by-case basis. So as you're looking at your need as a school, take that into consideration. Big component is capacity. We have learned through trial by fire that sometimes the things that we think are going to work or that we want to implement, we may not have the budget for or the people in place and really implement a good digital learning plan. Then of course that goes without saying, if you're trying to do remote learning or distance learning or hybrid learning, if you don't have the technology components in place, then it's really going to be difficult for you to implement online learning plan or a digital learning plan. And then of course, we can't do anything we know without the proper training supports. We've watched school after school over our careers implement really wonderful technology or really resources, and they forgot about the PD training piece. And that just doesn't mean PD for teachers. That means for parents, students, external stakeholders, all the people involved. Every stakeholder needs to be involved in that training component. And it's crucial to have our student supports in place. If we don't take care of the students' needs on an individual basis, more like a personalized learning plan, then it makes it really hard for that student to have success. We know that with all the ESSER funding that's coming our way, that one of the big concepts is lost learning, how to recapture that lost learning. So when you look at the student supports and all the mechanisms that have to come together to work together, if that student has special needs, if that student's gifted, all these things have to be taken in consideration. It can't be just a one-size-fits-all learning plan or program without taking all these in consideration. And then of course the magic is in the evaluation. Let's monitor, let's assess, let's reassess, let's reflect on what's working. Let's look at the data, let the data help us make some of those decisions, and let's just move along and reevaluate and look at our needs again and continue that circle. Tiffany, do you want to add anything to the parts I've talked about so far?
No, I think you're doing great, Don. Keep going.
All right.
Quick question.
Yes.
Quick question. What is AMI?
Alternative methods of instruction.
Oh.
So I believe it's 2017, we allowed schools to offer alternative methods of instruction, and I'll go into that a little bit more, but this is a good time to talk about that. So instead of schools, and Tiffany and Deb and Carly correct me where I may be a little bit off here, but instead of school losing a day of instruction, if they have the capacity to offer a learning day where, let's say a snow day, or a pipe bust, or something catastrophic happens where you can't come to school that day, you can shift or pivot, if you will, to an alternative methods of instruction day, whether it be worksheets, whether it be taking Chromebooks home, working or asynchronously, so they don't lose that day. And by law, we can allow schools to do that so they don't lose an additional day and then have days to the end of the year like we used to do back in the old days. So we call that alternative methods of instruction.
Okay. I just didn't know what the AMI stood for.
Sorry about that. I make a lot of assumptions. So when you hear things, Dr. Williams, just say, hey, Don, shut up. I need to know a little bit more about that.
Yes. I got PD as professional development in that one. So
I'm sorry.
This is extremely
we're terribly
helpful.
guilty of everyone knows all of our acronyms, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is basically the page that talks about Act 1280 and all the components for digital learning, and then goes a little bit more deep dive here in the AMI day. So Dr. Williams, you can go look at this component in the document, read a little bit more in there. And it just happened that we popped up that screen right there as you were asking that question. As we move forward, we wanted to give our schools examples. So instead of telling them, here's the options you need to choose, here are some examples of options that you can choose. And this is what they look like. So this is really where it was really critical for us to work with our partners at Team Digital to build these videos. And we wanted to make sure they didn't get bogged down by having to watch hours and hours and hours of videos. These are snapshots. Snapshot, 1 to 2 minute videos. For example, what is virtual and remote learning? What is blended learning? And how does that look for my school? So we gave them a brief little snapshot of what it would look like in the elementary school, what it would look like in the secondary school, combination thereof. And if they have more questions, The schools we encourage to engage directly with Team Digital, which is our external team that works on everything digital and blended learning. So they're a wealth of resources. They offer training, they offer assistance, they offer guidance. So there's no hole on what they can do. They can do pretty much anything. And if they'll figure out how to do it. Tiffany, would you like to add any comments to this piece?
Yeah, I'll just add, Don, that piece about building a digital program, that graphic, we think is very key, that if they had that with them at all times as they're thinking about with their Arkansas Ready for Learning team, those three pieces, they have the recipe for building a robust digital program. And I know Don said that, but that has been very instrumental in our journey with through training as well as giving feedback, is to really think about those three and to really make sure that you think about what's best for your students. But if you have that, that's sort of our one-pager recipe for how do you build a digital program. And I'll say again, just to reiterate what Don has said about the videos, again, they're examples, but it's a good jumping off place or starting point for our districts to really think about, will this model fit our students' needs? It's just about what's best for our students. And so we found that these have been very useful, even in describing options that districts may never have thought of before the pandemic. So
thank you, Dr. Pride. And as Dr. Pride said, this is basically a recipe. If you can follow the recipe and fill in the blanks and bring in the resources and work with your professional learning teams on campus, then this is kind of a no-brainer if you pull all those pieces. So when you go in and fill the application, which I'll show you kind of a brief overview of the application in a few moments, then you're going to be successful in your application process. So we're real pleased it worked out the way it has. We wanted to give everyone just kind of a step-by-step, how do I do what I need to do? How do I get to where I need to go? So that's where this kind of evolved from. So let me get back in here. All right. Everyone's still seeing the screen pretty well? Okay, so then we go into part two, and that's the planning and implementation. Keep in mind, we're keeping those same three core concepts: interaction, delivery, and platforms. And as they go through that, they work through all the different pieces. They can fill in the blanks here, kind of blueprint or their template as they start moving forward. We go into learning management, content management systems, deeper dive there. Then we bring them always back to the big picture. What is the big picture? Where are you at? Where you want to go? And here's how you get there. And as we go through all the practices and protocols, we look at all the different, and then we're going to talk about testimonials. And I'm not trying to rush through this, but as Ms. Kaufman said, you had a short agenda today, and I don't want to keep you for 3 hours because we could literally talk about this for 3 hours. Here's the strategic planning checklist. As they're thinking through this from a strategic point of view, what are my needs? What's my capacity? Capacity need, technology, training supports, go through, check off what you have, what you don't have. How can I do things better with these different components? What do I need to go find? What do I need to add? Student supports, evaluation, and then we jump into the training opportunities. And this is where we give them some resources. So this is one of the things our schools are really asking us for, is they're like, where do I go? Who do I ask? I don't even know where to start. And back to asynchronous and synchronous learning, when we first embarked on this path, I live in the technology digital learning world. So terms like synchronous and asynchronous, those are part of my daily vocabulary. What we learned early on is that there were still a lot of people who didn't even know what those two terms meant or how they applied. So when we started thinking about, wow, I didn't realize that there was such a gap between the folks who understood digital learning didn't. So we wanted to close that gap. And we think we've done a pretty good job of that. More people around the state now are reaching out to us and saying, hey man, I didn't know what asynchronous learning was until you guys introduced us to the digital learning guidance doc. So that's really a testament to we're making progress and we're all learning together and we're in this boat together and we're all plugging in the holes where the leaks come in together, trying to figure out how to keep this boat afloat. Just a little bit more about some of our resource partners with APSRC, Virtual Arkansas, ABC Clio programs. And then we jump into the assessment piece. I don't know enough about assessment. I'll let Tiffany talk about some of those pieces. And I had a few of her words to this piece, Tiffany, and you just tell me when to go to the next page.
Yeah, I'll just say, just to reiterate the use of this guidebook, that we've put any aspects by which a district would need to consider elements within their program. And so we know assessment is key. It's a piece where we're able to see if our students are where they're supposed to be in the progression of learning at a particular grade level. And so we wanted to ensure that as districts were building their digital plans, that they kept an eye on that component of assessing from a distance, that it looks differently than if you were in person. And so they would make considerations around, again, those three big elements. And I know Don said over again, and we keep repeating that we're building around the those three big elements of interaction, delivery, and platforms, that they're really thinking about how are they going to assess, depending on that interaction, depending on the delivery, and then how's their platform going to help them with that. And so that's one of the things that we wanted to make sure our districts were well equipped to design in their programs. And other elements, and I see Don has moved on, is really thinking about when you have students who have some special needs and they have accommodations that are critical to their educational journey, that we are planning for those as well. And so the guidebook has several things that are lifted and pointed out for districts to consider. So that's also critical. And we did that for any groups of our students that we know in law in particular. We have some responsibilities and just what's best practice when any student needs some differentiation of instruction. And so we considered all of those things. And I think, Don, if you go on to part 4, which is about teacher resources, those are just some ideas to help it's a starting point for teachers and districts as they think about what are resources we're going to need for different stakeholder groups, whether that's our teachers, our community at large, a parent, a guardian, any one of that considered part of our community. And so you will see there are QR codes, there are videos, there are links. And one thing I think is really great about this book is that Arkansas teams can do this book in increments. They can record, it's an interactive PDF. They can learn about a particular area of digital learning. They can record their thoughts and then come back as a team after they've gathered feedback and make some decisions that are best for their community. And so that's what we think is really neat about this book. And I'll let Don, this is one of his favorite pieces. You want me to keep going, Don, about implementation?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is actually Deb's favorite piece. And I know she's been quiet over there. This is her favorite piece. I don't know if she wants to jump in here because Deb was very instrumental in making sure that we thought about plan, do, check. And so this is her part. And I don't know if she wants to jump in there. Do you, Deb?
Yes, I'll be happy to jump in. With any good plan, do, check, there is the do. And that's what these school districts are working so hard to write a great plan, but what we're really looking for is working that plan for the benefit of students. And so during the implementation phase, which will be the next school year, we would encourage these schools to be checking in and making sure that their digital learning program is working as they expect it to work. And so they would be checking all of the components, the capacity, technology, the supports, student supports, teacher supports, all of that. They would be checking in to make sure that every component is working appropriately and making adjustments where needed to ensure the greatest success.
Absolutely.
And then, Don, if you go to the next one, I think it's evaluation.
Yes, my mouse quit working on me here. Here we go. Here's also my favorite slide.
As you look through this model and go on, then keep going to evaluation. In plan, do, check, then is the check, and that is the evaluation. And you have to look at it at least annually to say, did we serve students? And we heard from many school districts this year that said, we're not going to offer a digital learning program next year. We need to get our kids back on campus, get some of them caught up with some of their learning loss, and we will consider a digital learning option in the future. What we're looking for is our schools purposefully planning to evaluate and to make adjustments based on that evaluation. And so we've given some guidance here in what to look for in your evaluation. And so we don't want to just have digital learning programs out there. We want to have quality digital learning programs. And I would much prefer a school to come back and say, hey, we put our best effort forward, it didn't work, and we'd like to stop, as to someone who just keeps going on knowing that they're not serving kids well. So we think in this application that we've put all of the components in so that schools have had an opportunity to thoughtfully think through, plan, organize, and be ready for the beginning school year.
So in closing on that, we will jump into kind of what the application process looks like. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit here so I can see a little bit better. So we've created in our LEA Insights a wonderful portal. Now this is the admin login. This is something that Ms. Kaufman or Dr. Pride or Ms. Saraceni or I would look at with our teams when we're looking at evaluating a school submission. We can go in and click on one of these, and I'm not going to go through all this, but this is to let you know that we've created something that once a school has been approved by us and then approved by the State Board of Education, their application can then be made public for other schools to look at, so that it's a little bit higher level of accountability as well, that what we're doing, we take pride in. We're going to put it out there for the public to see. If other schools want to steal our ideas, that's a great thing too, because we believe in infringing on copyright, if you will. That's not really what we're doing, but we can steal my ideas and make it better. So we built this one. When I say we, I mean Regent Sarkar and the team did not build this. We just gave them the elements that we wanted. Really cool that we can have this wonderful component. State Board of Education members can go in and look at approved applications or whatever at any step of the road. But Deb and her team worked really, really hard on making sure that we had the elements built into this that looked good and met our guidelines. And this is basically the questions that they would see in their on application. I can't go into a live application for you, and you may not even want to see that. But this is kind of the gist of what they're going to be putting in there. So they're going to determine which schools, which grades. And some schools are only electing to do one set of grades or one school. They're not going to do it across the district. So they have that option to do it however they want to. They can do it synchronous, asynchronous, both, virtual, blended, however they want to do that. They can talk about the different LMSs and CMSs, learning management systems, content management systems that they want to use. But here's where it gets a little bit more deep. And this is the waiver component. You can apply for one or all of these when they're going through this process. And this is kind of the expedited waiver process that we were trying to build into this. So work around some things and work together. And the State Board of Education wouldn't have to go in and look at each one of these. We asked them to approve the process so that we could approve the application and say, these are applications we think are ready, that met all the guidelines, and they've asked for these waivers, and then hopefully expedite so they can start the implementation. The different areas, interaction delivery, keeping in alignment with what our guidebook is, tech platforms, student supports, very critical. And then we also have an element in here for teacher supports and district supports. We realized early in the game that giving all Chromebooks and all the hotspots to all the students is fine and dandy, but if the use them or don't know how to support them, then we're losing the game. So we wanted to make sure we incorporated that as well. And then we have a place in here for some of their policies. Now they can choose to fill out all that, or they can hop right down on their application process and just apply for AA days. And that's where we get back into only needing to pivot when there are certain catastrophic events or something like that. So that's kind of a snapshot of that. And that's on the State Board of Education agenda. I think it was January 11th or 12th, I believe, was the date for that. This right here is the actual presentation that we used when we started working with schools or the co-ops on the trainer pieces. We wanted them to go through all of the different areas. I'm not going to go through every slide here. I'm just going to do a quick little overview of this as on the training that we did. We did want to make sure that they understood that here, based on law right now, currently today, that next year we're going back to school face to face. We're going back to 178-day, 6 hours of instruction. That's what's planned, unless they have some need to apply for the digital learning option for certain student groups. And not just student groups, but for however they want. We went in and talked to them a little bit about AMI, because there are still some people who were a little bit gray on how AMI days were to be, and we wanted to incorporate that. So there was a one-stop for digital program and then AMI. They could choose one or both. And so they had that option. We also reminded them too, and this is something that Ms. reminded the entire state, that we're kind of getting away from the 5 makeup days that were part of something that needed to be incorporated into the calendar. We wanted to bring them back to that as well. And I'm going to scroll down through here, back to definitions. We basically started with the digital options, the starting point with asynchronous, synchronous, in the PowerPoint that we shared with the co-ops on the train the trainer. And you've already seen all this as part of the digital learning guidebook. And scroll through this right here. I want to talk about the non-negotiables. We really emphasize this with our schools and our co-ops, that we wanted them to be carefully, they're really thinking about the planning and the specific goals. We want them to be clearly defined. So when a school submits an application, if we have to ask questions or make assumptions, and they've not fulfilled the limits of that application process. That's kind of like what you guys worked with in the charter authorizing panel. If you have to make us about what they meant, or you have to ask questions, they've not enough evidence or documentation for you to approve that. And scroll on down, we want a high quality content instruction, opportunity for students and teachers to have device and proper connectivity. That was one of our other gaps that we noticed throughout the school year, this current school year, is that not only did our students not have connectivity when they were working remotely, but sometimes our teachers didn't either. So we wanted to make sure that our schools really took that in consideration as they're planning this and thinking about this. In some cases, some of the schools thought, well, are we allowed to teachers take home a hotspot? Are we allowed to let teachers, use a school laptop? Well, of course, you're trying to continue learning. That's what we're trying to do. Then the number 5 to me is one of the most important pieces of this particular graphic is communication. There's never enough communication, no matter how much you put it out there, no matter how many times you say it, how many emails, how many commissioners' memos, you gotta communicate. And what was one of our biggest gaps early on throughout the transition to remote learning was the lack of communication. We dealt with tons and tons of calls and concerns of parents just not knowing where to go, not knowing who to call, not knowing who to call when the student laptop didn't work. And so we really want to emphasize that there's a communication process, there's policies and guidelines in place for those schools wishing to pursue a digital learning programming option. And we want that to be regular communication, not just one email at the school year. We want that to happen throughout the year and throughout the week if necessary. So we wanted to make sure we hit all those high points on the non-negotiables. Tiffany, stop me if there's some slides in here you think we need to jump on. And this is kind of line right here. We got State Board of Education approval back in January. We're working, we went through the technical assistance, train the trainer, train ops. Submissions are all due by May 1st. And then we will have probably a pretty good batch of applicants that we're going to approve. But what we want them to do is not just shoot in the dark. We want our schools to work with their educational service co-ops prior to submitting an application, so that when we at the department, we review it, we look for all the high points, and if there are risks, we want them to fix those before their official submission going to the State Board of Education. We did not want state bogged down with all the little pieces, if you will, of that application process. So I've spoken, and Tiffany, did you want to cover anything on this particular slide here?
Well, I actually think you've captured it. Basically how we're coordinating our efforts, which is through our regional supports to districts, and then with our feedback. So I think you've covered it.
Well, guys, I know that I speak really fast and I go 100 miles an hour and I don't even hardly catch a breath. If you have any questions for me or Dr. Pride or Ms. Sarah or Ms. Kaufman, we're wide open. If you want to shoot an email, we'll be happy to answer any questions. Or right now, if you have any. Hopefully we covered it and gave you a really good snapshot of the hard work that we put in to make our schools more successful and ensure that we have student outcomes for the future and just for the state of Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Thank you, Dr. Pride. Panel members, the intent of presenting this information to you today is, number one, that you can go in to this website. You already see on our agenda today the document that outlines the questions that we will be asking open enrollment charters and district conversion charters if they desire an amendment to include a digital learning program within their charter. On the webpage, there are all of those resources that Don and Tiffany went over. So that'll give you a little opportunity to go in and review those. So the ask today is that as we bring forward to you charter amendments for digital learning programs, that we can expedite the process because you know that there has been a thorough review and feedback support from DESE to the open enrollment or district conversion charter. The district conversion or open enrollment charters will still have the opportunity to come before the panel and speak and answer any questions, but just knowing that we have done a very thorough review prior to, and hopefully we can move that along much quicker and get to the issues that need to be resolved by the charter panel. But likewise, we commit as a DESE team that if an application is coming to us and it is not of substance that we would review and recommend to you, that we will also tell you this is where the weak areas are, and they will need to talk about that and address that in the charter panel meeting. So with that concept, I'll ask you to ask any questions if you'd like to discuss.
I appreciate the time you all spent to bring this to us, and especially the time you spent to develop it. I'm not an educator, but it looked extremely thorough and extremely well considered, and it's been very helpful to me to see this.
No, I add to that I guess necessity is the mother of invention. You know, if we would have had this about 3 years ago, we would have been ready for COVID. So first of all, I want to commend you on the work that you all done, and thank you for the links. I have a little trouble with my trifocal seeing the small print, so I went to the links and was tracking through it. And this is really some great work. Being a former teacher myself, I can appreciate the interactivity of it. It's kind of a fun read. I kept getting caught on one part, and I wanted to read the next piece. I also like the idea of what Ms. Kaufman is asking today for us is to, kind of leave this whole review process from the digital piece to you all, and it's something that we don't have to delve into. I think this is really great for you all to take this on and make our lives a lot easier. And Ms. Kaufman, is this in line with what for traditional public schools have they already approved this also?
Yes, the state board has approved this process for traditional public schools, and they are submitting. And I will just add to this, we have a 17-member team that's reviewing these applications, providing feedback. Co-ops are working with them. We've had 5 school districts apply, traditional school districts apply. We are reading consortium drafts where school districts are working together in a consortium. We're reading those drafts and providing feedback. And as of today, we've had 3 charter schools, 2 open enrollment, 1 district conversion submit for us to review. And so we're still in that review process, of course. They're beginning to come in, but as Dawn said, May 1st has been our recommended timeline for all of our schools that plan to submit, to go ahead and get those in so that we have time to get them to the charter panel, to the state board, and they are ready to implement when school begins.
And Dr. Williams, I'd like to add too that this was a truly cross-collaborative project. When Dr. Pfeffer came to us with a vision for this, we thought we were just going to be cleaning up some of the terminology. As we started digging more and more into this, our schools needed a lot of help. They were struggling with this. They were trying to figure things. And of course, they wanted us to be involved. And as we got more involved, this really grew into a really big collaborative project, which we need to do that for all the things we do for our kids. We need to talk and even talk about the bad things and shed light on those things that didn't work. And so we wanted to make sure that we opened up every possible scenario. We wanted to show the good, bad, and the ugly as we built this to help them get through the process and minimize the problems. As Ms. Kaufman said earlier, you get at the end of the first 9 weeks next fall and working, do something different, let's fix it or scratch it. Mm-hmm. You're not locked in for the entire year. You're not obligated. We wanted to, I guess the best word I can say, Ms. Kaufman, is flexibility. We wanted to maximize flexibility for our schools, and the impetus of this whole project. So thank you, Mr. Baldwin and Dr. Williams, for your words. And if you see things that you think we could tweak or explain a little better, this is a living, breathing document. It is always going to be living and breathing, as everything should be, as we make changes and learn from our mistakes and find better resources. So we're very pleased to present for you today. Thank you for giving us the time, and look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
I just want to close and just say one quick thing. Dr. Pride and Mr. Ben, great presentation. You know, I spend 6-7 hours on a day on Zoom call. Very seldom do I feel the enthusiasm coming through. So a great job across the board. Thank you.
Dr. Flowers, any questions?
I do have one question, but I don't want to go off on a tangent here in regards to the check piece and the lost learning. I have some concerns and questions in regards to the, due to the maybe needs and lack of supports. How are we looking at that? But that's, you know, as I mentioned, a whole different area of discussion. But I'd like to have some personal conversations with you all about that, if that would be okay.
We're just a phone call or an email away.
Okay, great.
Yes, Dr. Flowers, feel free to reach out to any of the individuals at DESE, and we are happy to talk through, work through any of those issues or concerns. Ms. Saraceni, any questions or comments?
No, just great job. And every time I hear it, it's good for me to rehear it so that when we're looking at the plans and it just clarifies some things, and you guys just are very clear. It's just a really great process. And I think districts like it because now they understand the expectations from us. And I think this is just a great tool.
So I don't believe we need a motion on this, but I am looking kind of for consensus that through this process we can expedite these applications that have met all of the criteria that we've set forth, and then really kind of dig in and talk to the ones where there may be areas of concern or areas that may not have been described well enough to make us feel confident.
Got my support.
So in watching head nods, I see that consensus, and so with that, we will move forward. So as I said, the review committee, and just to kind of highlight that, the district support team in public school accountability, a team from research and technology led by Don Benton, a team from educator effectiveness led by Carly Saraceni, a team of experts from learning services led by Dr. Tiffany Pride, and our CTE office is also reviewing all of these applications, providing very detailed feedback to the co-op to assist those schools in having the very best applications. As applications become ready to present, then we will put those on the agenda. And of course, our team will be available to answer any questions along with the open enrollment or district conversion. And just so that everyone is very clear, the reason that they're having to come with this amendment is because offering a digital learning program that is not already included in their charter would need to be an amendment. And so they're widening their charter to include those multiple options for student learning. Any final questions before we adjourn today? With that, I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
So a motion by Dr. Williams, second by Mr. Baldwin to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is
Aye.
adjourned. Thank you for today.
Thank you all. Mhm.
Thank you all.
Thank you.